2, 3. Put your hands together for them. And over here we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put your hands together for them. And so, you will be taking the very first step on the show. Students from Livingstone, go ahead, take that first step. Congratulations to you. And what that simply means is that you'll be answering questions first.
Lots of jobs that followed, they are also trying to now open up and see to it that jobs are created so that the social consequence of this challenge is not also carried forward. So clearly speaking, I think, yes, attempts will be made to try to do of this, including trying to now force workers to work from home. But we know that as a matter of fact, in emerging economies like Nigeria, certainly that will be counterproductive. Even in developed economies like the US, where you have seen many, many people now filing for unemployment benefit, they must also strike a balance. Because as I said, the primary purpose of governance is about welfare and security of the people. And therefore, if many of the people have no welfare to rely on, then that policy or that approach may be counterproductive. And I think as Labour, we will not support such idea. We will come up with ideas that also can be able to be innovative to address some of those challenges. But I'm sure that people that want to work for profit will actually try to buy some of those ideas. And we have seen them around the world, including using robotics and also artificial intelligence to now replace people because they want to make more profit. So, but it's high time we also try to balance, and our government need to balance to make rules and regulation that will protect first human beings. Because humanity is at the center of development. Any development without humanity is not a development that is holistic. It's a development that also will come with some forms of challenge. So if we follow that path, the challenge will be so enormous that we cannot also be able to address some of those challenges.
All right, Comrade President, many administrations in Nigeria have tried to tinker with the setup in the public service, the civil service. Many reforms, many committees have been set up in the past by various administrations, including the Buhari administration, to review practices in the civil service, in government departments and agencies. Some reports from some committees from earlier administrations have been sent forward to current administrations. Quite recently, there has been the talk of reforms, mergers. What is the position of Labour on these mergers and reforms at this point in time?
Well, let me make the point that, yes, there have been a lot of reforms in the past by successive governments. And I can say that some of those reforms have not been able to deliver on what they ought to have delivered. Let me give you one example. In 2004-2005, there is the entire public service reform, where we brought in the issue of monetization, the sale of government houses, and saying that once you do that, and also outsourcing some services, particularly drivers and cleaners in the ministry, department, and agencies. As we speak today, most of those promises that have been made, that those reforms will deliver, they have not been able to deliver. In fact, monetization has been abused. Because the essence of monetization is to say that the humongous amount that is being paid to our political elites to maintain their drivers, maintain their vehicles, that such amount will go. But we have seen what is happening now. Still, our resources is being used to buy vehicles. They call it utility, but under the utility they hide, and they have been doing a lot of havoc. Even those category of workers that have been outsourced, you have seen what is happening. I remembered when I was on the board of one of the teaching hostels. In fact, the management was sued because they couldn't pay for an outsourced service. First, the cost of the outsourced service is even much higher than the staff that were laid off. So the hospital could not cope up. They have to abandon entirely that process of outsourcing cleaners, because also cleaning hospital is not like cleaning other places. So I can say that it has been policy somersault, no consistency, and in most cases they have not worked. Well, of recent we have also heard about the Onosade committee report. I've read the report. I've also read the white paper, and therefore I'm at loss. Which one are they going to implement? Is it the white paper? Because I saw the white paper. Actually, the white paper committee did well, because they were able to curtail some of the challenges that will have arose from implementing that committee report. Let us also have at the back of our mind that some of those agencies are also establishments of law. They were enacted by law. If you want to merge two agencies and both agencies have law that is backing them, we then have to review the law also before we now go to do the merger. If merger is about bringing efficiency and productivity, we are for it. But if merger is actually targeted at reducing the workforce, then it's also going to compound our issue. So we'll follow logically to interface with the implementing committee to know which one are they even implementing and how are they going to implement it. Because we are in a very precarious situation, and I think also that it will not be proper even to implement it now. Let us get out of one challenge so that we don't put too many things on the table, and then at the end of the day we lose essence of what we want to achieve. I think it's for us now to concentrate and fight coronavirus and let the process and the economy and also the challenge be addressed substantially. Then we can look at other issues so that we don't just get our mind divided in addressing some of those issues.
All right. Lockdowns have been eased all over the country, and the machinery of the civil service is coming back to life, albeit gradually. Certain categories of workers at the national level have been asked to resume duties 3 times a week. States have also adopted some of these measures. But here, you have also some challenges. How prepared are employers to ensure the safety of the workers who resume duty? Where I'm going to is, what are the rights of the worker to say, look, if you have not provided this safe environment and the things I need, which now are not just what used to be because of this virus, what is the right of the worker to say, look, I cannot go back to work under the circumstances if you have not provided what is necessary for me to work in this pandemic?
Well, first, let me start by appreciating profusely Mr. President for actually allowing for gradual opening up, because it was one conversation that I think there had been for and against, but I think in this case, I think the decision is well balanced. What remains is actually the implementation, which is what we need to do to ensure that that good gesture is not also abused. I think our problem stems from 2 issues. One is the fact that when people begin to compare Nigeria and possibly countries like Ghana, they forget that Nigeria is a federation and Ghana is a unitary state. Because in the case of Ghana, the lockdown was done at once. And therefore, every of the other provinces and entities were under lockdown. In the case of Nigeria, even when we locked down Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja, some states were still operating. And people were able to leave Lagos and travel to states like Kano, up to Maiduguri. I saw people traveling on motorcycle. From Lagos to Maiduguri, people travel on motorcycle. Some joined trucks. So we are not actually operating at the same frequency in responding to this issue. So to now say perpetually, because in the case of Nigeria, like in the case of US, state governors also have their own role to play in declaring either lockdown, partial lockdown, or even refusing to lock down completely. And that is what has happened. So in order to do a balancing and ensure also that some category of people don't suffer, and also some category of people don't have their means of livelihood cut off completely, that balance was then proposed. And I think it's a wise decision.
Right.
In the context, there are many models around the world that have worked. There are countries that have not undergone any lockdown. One of them is Sweden, Korea, and Taiwan.
South Korea.
Yes, they have not, that's why I say Korea. They have not done any lockdown. What they did is to enforce, 1, social distancing, enforce use of masks, enforce the issue of personal hygiene. And it's working. And the economy is also working. So we must be smart and innovative in the context of Nigeria. We don't just go and adopt what will not work in our own situation, because in our own situation, 70% or more are in the informal sector. You need to make sure you accommodate them. And that's why when the relaxation was made, you see the number of people that trooped out, even to access banking services. That is to tell you the enormity of the problem. So I don't share in those that are arguing that we should look at countries like Ghana. No, we are not at the same level.
All right.
You should compare apple with apple.
Okay.
You don't compare apple with pineapple. That will not work, and I think that has no empirical or scientific basis.
Okay, the work has been asked.
Going now to the issue of how we can ensure safety
of the worker.
even in this gradual lockdown. What is important, I think, is for us also not to just do copy and paste. Even in the gradual opening up, we must know the situation of our people now. In the civil service or public service, I expected that it should be gradual. Maybe you start even from level 15 or directors and one staff. You start at that level and make sure that you provide also all the protective requirements in terms of hand sanitizers, in terms of wash hand basin and equipment, in terms of mask. All of these things need to be provided, and we monitor the situation. And gradually, from one level to another, we can then gradually look at the situation gradually. We can even look at, among the number of days, how many days will such people come to work and how many days will they actually be effective. So gradually we monitor the situation. But I think the issue of scaling up occupational health and safety is very important. And we have said our workers must insist, especially the frontline health workers that have been working effectively.
Okay, you speak
and they
of
have
the
been putting in their best.
health workers.
In some facilities up till now,
Right.
even hand sanitizers are not available in primary care centers. Some of the states have not been able to provide some, and you don't know who will be coming.
Okay.
Somebody will be
there's
coming
this
to a
other
health facility.
category of workers who are in the front lines as well. Journalists, media
Certainly,
people.
certainly.
Now, at what point can a reporter say, look, my employer has not provided protective equipment for me, and I cannot expose myself to this kind of situation at a public meet? If you recall what happened at certain burials, reporters had gone in there. I spoke to some of them, and they said they were compelled by their employers to cover, even though they had no masks, they had no sanitizers, they had no gloves. They were forced to cover situations like that. Sometimes you have situations where journalists are asked to go out. At what point can they say, look, this has to be provided?
Yeah, let me try to categorize the workers into two categories, which is also a global standard. One, you have the frontline health workers, and you have also workers that are on essential service. So journalists fall under the category of workers that are on essential service, because whether corona or war period, journalists also are working. And what is expected is that they must be provided with, one, the protective equipment or gears that they require. For instance, the face masks and also sanitizers. It is expected that the minimum that should be provided for them is that their employers must provide this. But two, we must also take responsibility, because the issue of maintaining social distance is a personal responsibility that we must also take and make. So in this case, these are the two forms of approach that is required. One is for the frontline health workers, because one, they will be treating the sick. But two, you have also essential workers, like the armed forces, the police. Some of them have also gotten infected. The journalists have gotten infected. But in this case, we must also be very strategic to ensure that, yes, employers must provide A, B, C, but also the worker must also take full responsibility of ensuring social distancing. When you are covering an event, it is expected that you must be sure that social distancing is maintained. As a law enforcement agent, police and paramilitary, if they are also enforcing the lockdown, they must also take precaution. One,
right.
They require also the mask, they require hand sanitizers, but they must respect also social distancing. So in all circumstances, we have a responsibility of workers. We have a responsibility of unions to ensure that the worker is given the material he needed to work, but also the worker also have to take some responsibility. If these things are not provided, your safety is first.
Let's
report to your
let's
union
look at
and
the
we'll be ready
health
to take it
workers
up.
in the front line, the health workers who are in the front line, for instance. Would you push for a specific policy? I do recall that after reports about some pregnant health workers being exposed to COVID-19 and being and contracted the disease, questions were raised about whether or not pregnant health workers should be in the front lines. No specific decision was taken that I recall. It was just that the health workers should consider their position. I am saying, would you push for a definite policy to say any pregnant health worker should not
Yes,
be in the
certainly.
front line?
It's just like a war situation. In war situation, you are sure that you don't take the weak or those that are aged to the front line. you possibly keep them as reserves. In this case, we'll liaise with the health sector unions to make a particular policy recommendation. I don't expect pregnant women. You know also the other issues associated with pregnancy. It also affects their immunity because the immunity level will go down.
Even nursing mothers?
Yeah, even nursing mothers. I expected that they should not be at the isolation and treatment centers. They can be in the health facilities doing their routine job as usual, but they should not actually be in the treatment and isolation centers. And I think that is a reasonable decision or a reasonable policy that can be made so that we can also be able to protect them and also even protect the unborn baby from also being exposed to the coronavirus. So I think this is a policy that we can be able to engage.
Speaking of palliatives for vulnerable groups, it's been agreed that the elderly, the senior citizens are at risk. And we've heard of palliatives. I'm not sure if we've heard of any specific palliatives for these senior citizens, because as a result, it's quite easy to say, well, the pensioners, their pensions are guaranteed. But in COVID-19 situation, those pensions that all along, just like the minimum wage that you would say, a living wage was not even enough to take you home, those pensions have also paled into insignificance. So what measures, I am yet to know of any that has been specifically directed at the senior citizens, apart from saying stay at home? Some of them can't afford to just stay at home.
Yes, Cyril, I think I've tried to allude to that challenge earlier, to say that we have a systemic problem of not actually having a social security system that covers even the most vulnerable. I agree with you, everywhere around the world, the aged are the most vulnerable, even in the context of COVID-19, because most of them have some underlying elements of which it will actually compound also their exposure to COVID-19. For now, I'm not sure, I've not heard of any palliative that is targeted at the aged. Even some of them have complained that even their monthly pension, I think, has not been forthcoming, particularly those in the States. So clearly speaking, I think we are doing a disservice to these very senior citizens. And we have continued to advocate and will advocate for them, that we must also respect our senior citizens. These are people that have put in their best in the service of our nation. And certainly I quite see reason in trying to say that because they are a special group of people, I think it's high time some of the palliative also should be targeted actually to those group of people who are most vulnerable, especially those also that don't have relation that are taking care of them. You know that in other climes, you have even residential accommodation for the aged. You don't need to stay with your children. But here we don't have such arrangement. Everything is left to the extended family, where you don't have a well-to-do extended family. Then you are on your own and you suffer. And that's why the death of recent is also very high among the aged, the senior citizens. From many states, you have had the record of a high number of deaths from those category of people, possibly also because some of the care had not been extended to them. But I think also even the level of information dissemination about the fact that they are very vulnerable, we need to scale up the information dissemination, because first is that they also need to take some personal precautions, and secondly also that we need to have government also caring for them in terms of also making palliative or intervention specifically targeting at this group of people. So certainly I think it's a very challenging period, and because possibly also the fact that resources are very scarce, because that's why I try to also distinguish between the urban poor and even the rural poor. I grew up in the village. I know that in the village there is this issue of communal effort. If you don't have food, you can go to your neighbor and certainly you can eat.
Yeah, well,
but in the city,
social distancing.
Yeah, but with social distance, yeah, I agree with you. Social distancing, you can even get food stuff on credit. But in the city center, the city poor or the urban poor is very, very difficult. And that's why I like the way and manner China actually handled this challenge. You know that China did not actually lock down their major cities. Beijing was not locked. And because they have a policy that you cannot just leave your village and come to Beijing. In fact, you are admitted. There is what they call migration from the rural areas to the city center. On a yearly basis, it's regulated. They will even tell you the number. or people that are allowed to leave their rural area and come to the city center. So that's where you have statistics, and things are working perfectly, and they will be able to know who is the poor of the poorest and how they can be able to intervene and reach them in this very difficult time. So I think this is the way to go, to now look at our peculiar situation as a country, not just copy and paste. And in this, I think our policy makers must look at this from the perspective of, yes, Nigeria have a peculiar challenge. Our population is one. We have a population that is over 200 million. You cannot compare that with any country around very close to us. You can look at even countries like India. They have data. They know the poor of the poor. And therefore, when they want to intervene, and it's high time now, we try to strengthen the National Identity Card Management Agency. I don't see any reason why for 10 years we cannot have a credible data, unified data, that every Nigerian, we should be able to have his data and know what he's doing. We should know the unemployed. We should know that those that are underemployed. We should know those that are the poor of the poorest. We should be able to do that. And I think part of the lesson of COVID-19 is that we need to have a credible data, that the National ID Card Management Agency should be able to, if we can register people during voting period or during election period in 3-4 days, what is the difficulty? If we can do census in 3 days, what is the difficulty in having a national ID card for everybody? And we have a database that we can use. It will even subsume some of the database that we're using, like the election card. If you have a national ID card, it means you can integrate also your INEC number to it, and you can use it in voting. I think that's why our political office holders are running away from this, because it brings credibility. It will mean also one man, one vote, one woman, one vote. It means also that we'll have a data that we can use, and it's very credible. And I think this is what is happening around the world. So clearly speaking, I think this is one opportunity we can use. And secondly is to look at the state of our healthcare system. And education, which is very important.
All right. Comrade Ayuba Waba, as they say, coronavirus, even as it's wreaking havoc on the economy and lives, it has also brought in the need to, as they say, think out of the box. And we'll see the initiative by certain categories of workers, and also the need to begin to produce some of the things that we need locally instead of waiting on importation. You would see easily you have all kinds of face masks now being produced locally, and certain categories of workers, even during the lockdown, have found a way to make something now. So how is organized labor thinking out of the box to address the numerous challenges of unemployment and underemployment, even post-COVID-19?
Thank you very much. I think this challenge of COVID-19 have exposed a lot of the inefficiencies that is very evident in our system. And I think going forward is to look at the opportunities that have been opened up arising from this challenge. And some of these opportunities are very, very obvious. And Labour have tried to document all of this, and we are engaging relevant government agencies to be able to see how best we can be able to respond to some of those issues. Jobs can be created in Nigeria, but we need to put 1 or 2 things in place. Let me give you 4 of the policy options we have given to government. 1, we have looked at the fact that in oil and gas we have comparative advantage, because God has so much blessed this country with abundant resources, be it natural gas and be it petrochemical. We are so blessed. But the main problem we have had is managing these resources effectively. Labour have said time without number, and we have engaged different governments. I recall we engaged the administration of Musa Yar'Adua, where we come up with a well-documented report, where even government said, this report is perfect. Please give us 4-year moratorium. We are going to implement this, your report. And up till now, nothing has been done. Effort were made then. 1, I don't see any wisdom in us as a country continue to import refined product.
Okay.
We uploaded the issue of the private refinery, but no. In order to ensure a good competition, government must also be mindful and interested in business. And what we have proposed is that 1, let us have 2 years. Modular refineries can be built in 18 months. Even if you need to borrow money to do that, Labour is going to support you.
Okay.
Even if you're going to bring expertise, build in the entire Niger Delta region modular refineries that can engage all the youths in that region, because for now, they are even refining illegally.
Okay. So,
And that, I think, is one area we need to do. Why leave it to few people?
okay.
And then this continue to form part of our challenge. Secondly, we have said in our agri value chain, there are a lot of values we can add. In Ghana today, they have 2 days or 1 day in a week that you must wear made in Ghana, which means they now produce what they wear.
All right.
And they now match their words with action, including the president will wear what is made in Ghana 1 day in a week. We have gone a step further to say that, well, provide for our armed forces their uniform in Nigeria, but we can go further to say that let us also try to encourage you making use of what is made in Nigeria. I tell you, in the textiles industry, if you look at the value chain from the farmer to the end user, it's a lot of opportunity.
Right.
Because with 200 million people, you are sure that if we produce what we eat, we produce what we wear, I assure you that the entire West African market, like the oil and gas, we can take over the entire West African market.
Well,
thirdly, is also the issue of fighting corruption.
Right.
And ensure that there is good governance. You can have resources like have been the case of Nigeria, but yet these resources have been squandered.
Okay,
so we
President,
support effectively the fight against corruption.
right.
And say we say it's high time. Let the executive and the National Assembly put head together and put specialized court in place that can dispense with all corruption cases within 6 months at
Well,
most.
I'm afraid it's at that
So
point.
these are
we
some
will
of the
have to
approaches,
leave
and
it.
these things are well documented.
documented.
We have
Okay.
shared with some of the committees. We are sharing with some of those very critical agencies. Labour is not just aloof.
All right.
Labour is also
Comrade
thinking.
President,
And we have the
it
Labour
is-
civil society situation room now working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, thinking and also strategizing and assisting
Unfortunately,
government.
we've just about
and
run
putting
out of
things on the
time, and
table.
so we must leave it here. And thank you very much. There's so many issues to raise, but we're confident that you'll come again and we'll explore these issues even post-COVID-19. Once again, thank you very much, Comrade Ayuba Uwaba, President, Nigerian Labour Congress.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for sharing my thoughts with many of our viewers.
All right. And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll reach you again on One-on-One. I am Cyril Stover, and I say, stay safe. Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stover. COVID-19 is taking its toll not just on lives, but on livelihoods as well. Now, arising from the measures to beat the pandemic are serious consequences. How do you balance health with wealth when the working people are all but overwhelmed by a killer virus? COVID-19 has brought about the loss of millions of jobs worldwide, threatening economies and wreaking havoc on those infected and those not infected. My guest today is the leader of organized labor in Nigeria, the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Let's welcome Comrade Ayuba Uwaba. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Cyril. Good evening, and good evening, viewers.
It's a tough call, isn't it? What's happening? The pandemic, it's tough on not just lives, but on livelihoods. Let's start on that premise. We've seen lockdowns, we've seen restrictions, we've seen employers shutting down, we've seen threats to jobs. Millions of jobs have already been lost worldwide. And let's come back home to Nigeria. How is this pandemic affecting employment, jobs, livelihoods?
Well, it's really a challenging period globally. It's a global catastrophe that has affected both social and economic well-being of the people, but also importantly, the health of the people. And clearly speaking, even the best economies around the world have been affected. Emerging economies are also crying. The best health system around the world have also had a lot of challenges. And weak health systems, like in developing countries, have also exposed some of the inadequacies in our health system. Importantly also, the very scarce human resource in health have been overstretched in all the countries around the world. And Nigeria is not an exception. So clearly speaking, this is really a very challenging period. In the context of Nigeria, I think it's twofolded. One is the health challenge, which I think for now all of us are aware that many have been infected. We are trying to possibly work around over 2,500. We are approaching possibly 3,000. And also in the case of fatality, I think the fatality rate also have been on the increase. But importantly, I think is means of livelihood. There have been disruption in the socio-economic life of many Nigerians. And I think it will take a very long time before we return to normalcy. Jobs are being threatened and people are losing their job on daily basis. Let me start from the premise of appreciating what the CBN have just done to try to intervene and save millions of jobs in the banking sector. I think that is what is needed at this very important time. It must be people before profit. And clearly speaking, in the context of Nigeria, where you have more than 70% of the people working in the informal sector, the challenges will be so daunting because these are people that have to go out in the morning to find what to eat in the evening. You have also the class of people are referred to as the urban poor. Those are able youths that have left the villages to come to the city centers to find something to do. And you also have the rural poor. Those are people that have remained in the villages and they are into agriculture and petty trading. So clearly, if you look at the picture, it's a picture that actually paints a lot of gloom and a lot of challenge. And clearly speaking, as you said, the ones we know are even the ones we are reporting now. But I am aware that many in the small and medium scale enterprises have already lost their means of livelihood. And especially those in the informal sector, the laborers, the carpenters, those people that depend on petty trading are also largely affected. And that's why when we had this window of opportunity of people, of government trying to relax the lockdown, you saw the number of people that actually dropped out. This is to tell you the magnitude of the challenge. So clearly speaking, in the context of Nigeria, both from the economic angle and from the health angle, the challenges are overwhelming. And you have seen also the number of health workers that have been infected. It's because of the fact that with the challenge, our weak health system have been exposed. And importantly, now what is happening from what I've gotten from the field is that many people visiting our health facilities, be it primary care centers, be it secondary health care centers, be it tertiary institutions, they try to hide their medical history. They also hide their travel history. And therefore, workers, those frontline workers are also left to try to now guess. And that amount to the high number of cases. Not only health workers in the isolation and treatment centers. No. Health workers in different health facilities are now also testing positive. So it's really an overwhelming challenge. We pray that the number doesn't actually pass the proportion we can manage. Because if it passes that number, it then means the challenge will be too overwhelming. So I think also the fact that the fatality rate so far, when compared to other advanced countries, we can say that our fatality rate is still I think under a situation that is less than 5%. So clearly speaking, I think God has been so merciful, but we need to look at the whole issue and try to respond to those challenges effectively in a well-coordinated manner, but I think in an innovative way. This is what is required at this time, but not actually to now try to shift blame or try to also look at workers as being the challenge. Workers have never been a challenge anywhere in the world. In fact, workers have been part of the process of development. We create the wealth. And if we create the wealth of any society, we shouldn't be look up at this challenging period as a burden. Workers can never be burdened. And I think that's the problem of organized labor, and particularly NLC have had with some employers. Instead of coming to the table to look at how we can discuss, because the laws are very explicit, we can discuss such issues through a collective bargaining process. And in 4 of the thematic areas that ILO have come up with for responses, country responses, one of the key areas is social dialogue. Social dialogue to address any challenge. Yes, because clearly with the challenge in the economy, there will be threat to jobs.
Right.
But we must do it in an innovative way so that the issues don't get compounded and then we go into prolonged recession, God forbid, and it's compound our issue. So this is where we are, Cyril.
Now, two issues come readily to mind, and that's even before we go into the specifics. As you have also observed, jobs have been lost daily, even in well-managed economies. We've seen layoffs. Now, we say we're part of a global system, and so some employers are beginning to say, look, if the best run agencies, the best run organizations have been brought to their knees and they're forced to take drastic measures in terms of job losses, job cuts, or reduction of emoluments, why is the case different in Nigeria?
Well, thank you, Cyril. As you rightly put it, the challenge to job losses and income losses is a global issue now with the challenge of COVID-19. But also in many of those countries, they are looking at country-specific issues. We cannot just, for the sake of doing it, try to adopt hook, line, and sinker what is happening in other climes. We have very good example even from our contemporaries, African countries that have been very innovative in approaching this issue. It's twofolded. One is the fact that we are not at the same level of development with some of those advanced climes where they have social security cover that is very extensive and that covers everybody, including unemployment benefits. In our case, we don't have such. And in our case, even those working in well-established organizations, the social security cover is not there, it's not enough. When you lose your job in Nigeria, whether in the informal or formal sector, there is no perfect social security cover. So this is one issue. The second issue is the high unemployment rate. The unemployment rate today in Nigeria is so high that even the number we are putting in public domain, I'm not sure it captures the issue. Because the issue of data in Nigeria has become a problem. We don't have an empirical data to actually point to what we are saying. So if you look at these two scenarios, it then means that we have to be very careful, we have to be strategic, we have to be smart, we have to be innovative in responding to this issue. In those climes, because of those provisions of perfect social security cover, they can actually go ahead to do some layoff because there are unemployment benefits. That once you are unemployed, you are sure that there is a benefit coming to you. But in the context of Nigeria, especially the most vulnerable, it will be a threat to the system, to the security system, to the social fabric of our country, if we just adopt some of those procedures, hook, line, and sinker. And that's why we said, clearly with the challenge we are going through, we must be very strategic. Yes, there are challenges, but the preposition of labor and what is also happening around some climes is to have a social dialogue around the issue of job protection, income protection, and even the threat to jobs. The employers have key into this, and the Federal Ministry of Labor, including the federal government, has also made pronouncement in respect of this. In fact, I recall the presidential address. He clearly said that we must respect our laws. Okay. We must respect also the dignity of labor. Labor is not merely a commodity. that he just take decision over and above his head, shaving his head in his absence because he has no value. Workers have value. And if they have value, what is the difficulty in discussing? Put the facts on the table. This is what I have. This is the difficulty I have. How can we navigate? Because it's a temporary challenge. Hopefully we'll get out of it. And we must also recognize the strategic contribution that workers have done over the years in different establishments, both in the public and private sector, to build our economy and build those institutions to where they are today. How can we so soon forget the contribution, very strategic contribution of those workers? So what we are saying in essence is that we are not trying to invent a new wheel. No. We are trying to say that, can we respect our laws? Can we respect international best practice? ILO Convention is very clear on that. Convention 87 and 98. That in such a situation, we must have a conversation where everybody will be on the table. Government as a sovereign, not as an employer in this case. Government will be on the table as a sovereign, because the primary purpose of governance is the security and welfare of the people. So government will be on the table by ILO standard as a sovereign to actually try to be the judge to balance some of those issues. The workers' representative will be there. Then employers' organization will be there. That's the tripod to look at the challenge sector by sector, both public and private. And also, we must put in place some packages, either in form of palliative or in form of stimulus, that will also mitigate some of those issues. All of those issues will be discussed on the table, because they should be live after Corona-19. So this is what we are talking, and this is what we have been preaching, and this is the line of thinking of the global world now. And I think even at that level, we have gone further, because even at the level of the UN, those issues have been well stretched. And ILO have been part of the process, and countries have been encouraged to follow this 4 pillars approach to try to respond to some of those challenges. So we're not rigid in our approach. What we are merely saying is that don't go and just cut our salary and hiding under COVID-19, whereas you are making profit. Now, in some of those organizations, they have posted humongous profit, like the banking sector. Humongous profit.
Now, these are the issues that are beginning to emerge. Let's for a start, let's take the public sector workers. Nigeria, as we all well know, derives a large chunk of its revenue from the sale of crude oil. That has just about gone now. Reports from all over the world say producers are paying buyers to take the oil off them. So all that is down. Nigeria only recently agreed on a national minimum wage. And even that was problematic. You had the federating states. Many of the states complained about that. In fact, it would seem that not all the states have started paying the new national minimum wage. And now you have a situation where many of the states, or virtually all the states, come to Abuja every month to share revenue. That revenue has dwindled now as a result of COVID-19. Now, these are governments that had always threatened to lay off workers. Now, they have a fine, excuse to do that. What level of dialogue have you been in with particularly the states?
Thank you very much. Let me say that in every situation, whether pleasant or unpleasant, we have choices to make. And in this case, as a country, as a government, as a people, we have choices to make. There are choices we can make that can actually be a first saving measure to try to address the issue in the interim. And I think in this type of situation, this is what is required, to look at the issue and then see how best we can get out of it. Even when resources were available and we never had challenge of COVID-19, some of our employers, including some of the state government, to part with the money becomes very difficult, because some of them prioritize white elephant projects that possibly don't have direct bearing with the life of their citizens than to pay worker salary. And I can tell you that from empirical data. States that are receiving very low in terms of revenue are the first to implement the minimum wage. Take, for instance, state like Borno, where you have the insurgency, where what they have is very small. But yet, without any strike, without any argument, it was implemented. States like Jigawa, that never assessed the bailout, yet they were able to pay, including paying pensioners. So it's about choices. It's about how we look at the worker. It's about how we're able to put in place good governance. Those are the issues. It's essentially not about the issue of revenue. But in this case now, it's about the issue of revenue. Why should the first choice be to cut worker salary? We know, as a matter of fact, that some of our states are well indulged. They are well indulged in terms of resources. And if we're able to think out of the box, I'm sure that we'll be able to diversify our economy. Don't only rely on coming to Abuja on a monthly basis to now collect resources. In most cases, strict accountability is not actually attached to it.
Yeah, but all those would say before this pandemic.
Yes, all of these are factors we need to now look at. One, I agree with you, we are in a challenging period. And that's why I keep emphasizing, even in this challenging period, while workers will be ready and unions will be ready to give some concession, but we must do that also on the basis of clear information that we have before us, where we will engage in a process of collective bargaining. Two, there are also avenues to cut excesses. We now have to do things that are necessary and important and that has direct bearing with the life of citizens. It's about life and death. So we have choices to make. It's about life and death. Which one is more important? To have retinue of 8 or have convoy of 100 vehicles or have a convoy of 2 vehicles and then use the money to save lives? Which one is important and more strategic? So it's to think strategic now. And what we are saying is that when you put the facts on the table, we'll be able to tell you areas where you can cut off, areas where we can do saving, and areas we can also make sacrifices. This is what we are saying in this challenging period. But we don't also agree on a situation where a governor unilaterally will just say, I've deducted worker salary with 25%. I'm also deducting my own with 50%. How much are they earning? Can you compare somebody earning? Because even in the 30,000 we're talking about, when you remove tax, you remove other mandatory deduction, National Housing Fund, you remove pay as you earn. How much is left? It's around 25,000. Can you compare that with somebody that is earning 3, 4, 5, 15 million? If you cut his own with 50%, we go to the same market. How much is he left with? A worker that is earning 25. If you cut 25,000, how much is left? And you know the situation in Nigeria. Every worker today have dependents because of our extended family system. If you are the only breadwinner in the family and you are working, you take care of everybody because of the unemployment situation. This is the reality of the issue. So in the context of taking decision, why not put the facts on the table? Why must we shave our head in our absence, even without dialogue, to say that you have a challenge? Some of them, let me tell you the fact. Before they assume office of governors, we know how much they have declared as their personal wealth. How many of them have come out openly to say, out of my personal wealth, not government resources, because government resources in government coffers is also our common wealth. How many of them have come out to say, I have declared 900 billion. Out of that 900 billion in my account and my assets, I'm donating to the public 25% of my wealth. For a worker, his entire wealth is that salary. So where is the justification to say that for a worker, unilaterally, you are going to deduct his salary? So let's strike a balance. That is our argument. Our argument is that bring the facts to the table. Why are you hiding the facts? Putting some facts under the table and then taking some decision over and above our heads. This is not what labor is all about. Globally, nowhere has such decision been taken without consultation. Even where we'll make sacrifice, we'll be ready to do that. But let there be consultation, genuine consultation, putting the facts on the table. This is what is required. So even in this difficult situation, let me also give you the indices. One, inflation rate officially this month is about 12.22%. For the past 8 months, inflation has been going up. The value of our currency, you are aware, has also dwindled. Today, the exchange rate is hovering around, in the black market, around over 400 naira to the dollar. Price of goods and services have gone up. So how do you want the worker to survive in these very difficult times? This is the balance we need to strike. We are not just arguing for arguing's sake. No. We are arguing with empirical data to try to advance an argument of knowing what we need to do. If there there are challenges. Yes, we agree there are challenges. But let everybody be in the discussion to know how best we are going to navigate. We are not running away from discussion. We are not saying we cannot make sacrifice. But we are saying in the context of what is happening, put it on the table. I give you an example. In other climes, well-to-do individuals, and let me use this opportunity to appreciate some of our businessmen and women that have actually also made a lot of sacrifice. I've so Boa donating more than 4 billion. The Dangotes of this world, the Adetolas, some of them from their wealth, they have been able to put money to try to respond to those issues. But I've not seen one politician from his accumulated wealth, what they have accumulated outside our commonwealth, that have come out to say, I'm donating X amount. Because when you put hand into our commonwealth and you are donating, it's still our money. You are stealing from Paul to now pay Paul. Not even from Peter to pay Paul. No. You are stealing from Paul to pay Paul. So that certainly will not work. And that is where we are. And that's why Labour is insisting. Let us look at the global best practice while working smart and innovative to know how to approach those issues. It's not a one-stop approach. No, we are ready to do that. And why not consider the enormous sacrifice that we have made in the past? It's only workers that have made the sacrifice that no other group have made. When we got the 18,000 minimum wage some years back, politicians reviewed their salary with 800%. What percentage were we given? It's the same economy. We are saying the economy is not doing well. I agree with you. The resources have dwindled. With the lockdown, even VAT that actually supplements the oil revenue will also go down. And other sources of revenue will also go down. And that's why we are saying that we must find a balance between continuous lockdown and also how smart we can be able to allow some other establishment to work so that the challenge does not become more compounded. So we are ready to discuss. Even yesterday, I must thank the Minister of Finance. Through a visual meeting, Labour was also invited to be part of the discussion on the strategy to working towards the challenge of COVID-19. And that is actually commendable. So why should governors run away? Why should the establishment run away? Why should the private sector run away from discussing with Labour?
All right,
as I speak to you,
if we look at it from this other angle, okay, there might well be an agreement not to shed staff, particularly in the public sector. But many people are agreed that life as we know it will never be the same post-COVID-19. And so it has drawn attention. One of the strategies that was used at the start of this pandemic was social distancing, the lockdowns, work from home. So that has further underscored the need for jobs that can be performed outside the official environment. Now, post-COVID-19, are we worried that employers will now see that there's no need to have XYZ number of staff come into the office if XY minus Z can perform the same function outside the office environment? Would that not lead to a realization that employment, paid employment as we know it, can be brought to the barest minimum?
Yes,
you worry about that?
Thank you. We are worried about that, but I think the recent statistic released by the International Labour Organization point to the fact that only 18% of the global workforce have been able to work from home effectively, using tele or other means, which means, clearly speaking, there are some establishments that certainly you cannot continue to work from home. So clearly, I know as a matter of fact that with the challenge of COVID-19 and the fact also that in the digital economy, where I think working from home seems to be higher, there is the tendency and possibility for people to look at how to now imbibe some of those cultures. But clearly speaking, I think in the context of developing countries like Nigeria, it will be counterproductive. And importantly also that we must be able to strike a balance, including making sure that our teeming youth will have something to rely on. If we don't do that, it then means also that we will be spending more money on the issue of security. So we must strike a balance, and government must come out clearly with the regulation. Even in developed countries, they are trying to regulate all of this. In airports before, in cities like Philadelphia and others, you have seen that they have reduced the workforce. But with the challenge of COVID-19 and the loss of jobs that followed, they are also trying to now open up and see to it that jobs are created so that the social consequence of this challenge is not also carried forward. So clearly speaking, I think, yes, attempts will be made to try to do all of this, including trying to now force workers to work from home. But we know that as a matter of fact, in emerging economies like Nigeria, certainly that will be counterproductive. Even in developed economies like the US, where you have seen many, many people now filing for unemployment benefit, they must also strike a balance. Because as I said, the primary purpose of governance is about welfare and security of the people. And therefore, if many of the people have no welfare to rely on, then that policy or that approach may be counterproductive. And I think as Labour, we will not support such idea. We will come up with ideas that also can be able to be innovative to address some of those challenges. But I'm sure that people that want to work for profit will actually try to buy some of those ideas. And we have seen them around the world, including using robotics and also artificial intelligence to now replace people because they want to make more profit. So, but it's high time we also try to balance, and our government need to balance to make rules and regulation that will protect first human beings. Because humanity is at the center of development. Any development without humanity is not a development that is holistic. It's a development that also will come with some forms of challenge. So if we follow that path, the challenge will be so enormous that we cannot also be able to address some of those challenges.
All right, Comrade President, many administrations in Nigeria have tried to tinker with the setup in the public service, the civil service. Many reforms, many committees have been set up in the past by various administrations, including the Buhari administration, to review practices in the civil service, in government departments and agencies. Some reports from some committees from earlier administrations have been sent forward to current administrations. Quite recently, there has been the talk of reforms, mergers. What is the position of Labour on these mergers and reforms at this point in time?
Well, let me make the point that, yes, there have been a lot of reforms.
The Pieshan of the mind, Rasta. So that is just what these people have come to do.